Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with a creator request, which is where a band gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their stuff. Today, we're looking at something from a band called Frontières. It says, "Hey, Bryan, we're a metalcore band based in Quebec, Canada. We're an independent self-produced band and are getting ready to announce a major project. In March, we'll begin a sequence of releases which consist of 3 EPs that will eventually merge into an album. The first single, which comes out on March 8th, which was a couple days ago, will be the one featuring Lochie from Alpha Wolf." So, that's pretty exciting. Multiple EP releases that form into a full LP, I'm going to assume. Before we get into this track, which is called Mirage, I do need to put out an epilepsy warning. This song has a lot of flashing in it and quick changes of colors that take up the whole screen. So, if you're susceptible to any of that, do audio only, look away from the screen, any of that, for the duration of the reaction. Alright, let's dive into this. Tons of forward momentum. We have a home note. The guitars kind of move around it a little bit, but keep returning back to it frequently. Interesting, so we have a language shift. There's an interesting fuzz on the instruments that kind of give them a digital vibe. The vocals get this digital element from the multiple layers, but the guitars have this interesting electronic fuzz to them, like a gritty synthesizer rather than metal guitars. Where is this structurally? This is a new section, but it comes after our verse. I love full-on breaks like that. Yeah, so what is that? Verse, chorus, verse, new section, chorus? That chorus is interesting too, because it feels like a single idea from our melody, but there's actually two parts to it, I think. The build up, rising pitch in the background. This reminds me of that new section after Wait, is it over? Huh. Oh, it looks like they have at least one album out already, which would probably explain a lot of the exceptional production on this. Um, so I'm going to touch on the musicality of everything first. But the music, the notes, the theory underneath this, I don't think is as important to the track as the sound of it. So we'll touch on the music. I think it's going to be real quick. And then I really want to touch on structure and production and timbre and all that good stuff that goes into, well, honestly, a lot of metalcore. It's very rule of cool. They're not trying to be flashy theoretically. There's not a lot of chord changes, key changes or wild chord progressions that are unexpected or anything like that. It really is about the overall texture of the track, and they have an interesting thing going on here that I want to get to. But we tend to focus on music first, so let's dive into that. Musically, there's a lot going on and there's not a lot going on. A lot of our sections are texture based. It really is about achieving a specific sound and atmosphere more so than crafting specific melodies out of any of our instruments. Our guitars are primarily focused on one of two, well, no, just one thing, and that's the riff. The bass gets thrown into there as well. The drums are primarily there for keeping time, and the vocals are there for delivering the lyrics exclusively. We can put in a secondary component of the vocals as texture based, as they are rhythmic and compressed and they're a harsh vocal, but there's very little melodic quality to the vocals as well. So if the guitars aren't really focusing on melody and the vocals aren't really focusing on melody, we have very little element of melody in our track at all. Harmony isn't even that utilized here, as there's very few chordal ideas. A lot of this is monophonic riff based that is focused on sounding really cool, adding texture and atmosphere to the track. Um, and I've never really thought about this before, but we've heard metalcore like this that's kind of utilizing the same structural idea of composition. There really just isn't a lot of melody, and it's like, if you had asked me 5 years ago, before I started this channel, hey Bryan, can you write a track without melody? I think I'd have a really tough time doing so. Or maybe writing a song that de-emphasizes melodic contribution, because it's not to say there is no melody here. It just isn't emphasized. I think I'd have a tough time doing so. Even I'd have a tough time envisioning what that would even sound like. But metalcore is actually a genre that's really good at this. Everything is textural or rhythmic. Melody and harmony just isn't a core aspect to this style of music. And I find that kind of fascinating, just the fact that it exists. I mean, we have music without rhythm. We have music without texture. We have music without atmosphere. Music without texture. No, I think that one's impossible. Playing something adds a texture. It just might be de emphasized. But melody and harmony are kind of these core aspects to music. Even something like hip hop that's primarily focused on rhythmic components, or even the vocal delivery is based on rhythmic and textural ideas more so than pitches. There's still usually some sort of melodic component in the background, even if it's just a simple piano line. It's just kind of, I don't know why that dawned on me right now. It's really interesting. Um, in our verse, though, our guitars have a home note, and they sort of go above it a little bit, come back to it, go down a little bit, come back to it. We kind of sit within like 4 or 5 pitches, maybe tops. Maybe it's even closer to like 3 pitches. And it's just about keeping that forward momentum going. It's just a series of eighth notes where they kind of dance around this home note and continuously return to it. It's not cyclical and it's not circulatory. It's just kind of is. It doesn't go anywhere to come back to. It just sort of hovers in this spot. If you pace in a circle in your room, that is technically a cycle. It is circulatory, but you haven't really gone anywhere to make a journey back. And that's kind of what this style of music feels like, and that's why I say, it doesn't really go anywhere. It does. It is cyclical. It is a loop, but it doesn't really go anywhere to come back to it. It sort of starts where it ends consistently. But again, it's not designed to do anything other than sound cool, provide the texture, provide that atmosphere, get that rule of cool sound going, and lean into the atmosphere of the track. The bass is pretty much laying down the pedal tones here for the guitar to kind of dance around. Our drums, metronome right there. A lot of forward momentum ideas. It's not rigid. There's syncopation to it. It's pretty typical for metalcore to kind of get that groovy syncopated drum line, but it is primarily there to craft the groove and the time signature and bring that into the song as an instrument. And the vocals, as I mentioned, deliver the lyrics while also providing another level of distortion. And we'll touch on that when we hit the production elements. But the main note here is that the vocals are purely rhythmic and textural. They don't provide melody. When we get to the chorus, this pretty much continues on, although the drums get a bit more rigid. We slow it down a little bit as far as how many times the drums hit per bar. And there's actually something interesting going on here where I think there is a hocketed idea in our melody. Again, I put melody in quotations because it is a melodic idea, but it is just like the bare bones of what we could call a melody going on here. There is a second instrument going on. And see, if it were two guitars and they were panned differently, I could hear that. But the fact that the guitars are produced the way they are, both sonically and positionally, I don't know what these instruments are that are contributing to this hocket. But there is a pedal tone rhythmic idea that's going on here where we get a hit on the downbeat of 1 and then we wait a little bit and then we get like a hit on the offbeat of 3 into the downbeat of 4 or something like that, and it creates this rhythmic chugginess, right? In all that space though, we have a moving melody going on. It's a series of notes. I think each note is played twice if I remember correctly, and it's sort of just like dancing around, right? But when you put these two together, it sounds like we hit the low note, we do these little melodic ideas up here, then we come back down to the low note, and we hit it a couple of times now to change things up, and we come back up and we play these high notes again. And it feels like this heartbeat, this returning home after, coming out to this area over here. But when you listen closer, the timbre that's playing those higher tones never actually goes lower. In fact, when we get those low notes, there is a harmony against it with our lead melody timbre continuing to play the notes up here. And so it's not really a hocket, I guess, per se, but it's more of a harmonization of specific notes in our melody are accented an octave below at our root tone. And that was really interesting because the first time I heard it, it sounded like the guitars were just hitting an open tone and then, playing some higher stuff and then bump, 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 something like that, right? You just hit that open low string and then you riff on your higher strings between those. But it is actually two separate instruments here. The lower strikes, though, this kind of gets into production. The lower strikes are on both ears. So it almost feels like if there are two guitars, these are our two guitars. But the higher melody, if I heard correctly, only exists on the right side, which makes it feel distant from the rest of the band, separated a bit. If it was on both, it would feel like this conjoined idea where the whole band was operating on a mirror, where all instruments were present on both sides and there was a mirror in the middle that perfectly reflected it. But I think this is one of the only situations, other than the drum kit, because the drum kit is produced and placed with certain drums being on the left, drums being on the right, centered, usually in correlation to either the drummer's perspective left to right or the audience's perspective of the drum kit left to right. That's just typical, though. I tend to exclude drums when I'm looking at the placement of instruments because they tend to exist across the full spectrum. The bass is centered, our guitars are on either side, consistently doing the same thing. Our vocals are centered, everything is perfectly mirrored except this one instrument, which I feel, or at least I remember, is only off to the right. It's an interesting idea there. When we get to the C section, which we visit at the end of our verse 2 and in our outro, it continues on with the ideas of our A section, but kind of takes it more into a breakdown idea where instead of sitting around a single note, we just have a single note and we play a rhythmic idea on top of it. Pretty standard for a metalcore breakdown, but it kind of stands out as a third distinct composition technique that I just wanted to point out here. So those are our three techniques here. It's pick a note and dance around it, primarily focused on the atmosphere, the texture of this sound. Have a melody that goes along with a rhythmic staccato idea, or just have the rhythmic staccato idea. And you'll notice melody only came up in one of those. That's our chorus. Now, none of this, I think, is exceptionally groundbreaking, which isn't a bad thing. We've talked about this before. We have iterative bands who continue to refine a sound and innovative bands who make new sounds. We need both of them in order to progress music. This is pretty iterative metalcore. Again, not throwing shade, just saying, observing. It's not a bad thing. But there are some interesting concepts to this in the production side that really stand out, as well as the structural side. So I want to start with structure first because I think it's the shortest, but it's also the most interesting. Something we've been picking up in a lot of modern pop is this shift from the ABABCB concept, first chorus, bridge chorus, to ditching that final chorus and ending the track on the bridge, the ABABC. This is interesting because prior to going to the chorus after the bridge, we had a lot of songs earlier on that did a third verse into a third chorus after our bridge. And so we eventually got rid of that third verse and said, well, we'll just end with the chorus. And now we have a generation saying, well, why do we need that last chorus? Let's get rid of it entirely. And now we have nothing after the bridge. And this ABABC pattern is really interesting because it allows our bridge to not feel like a bridge at all. It's not taking us from one section to another. It's taking us out of the song. We now have verse, chorus, outro, which drastically changes up what the bridge or what our C section could or should be. It's no longer a transitory concept where maybe we explore similar vibes in a different style or something like that, or we explore a brand new idea designed to bring us back to where we were, kind of feeling cyclical there. Now it can be a standalone concept that takes us out of the song. It's completely changed what our C section can be. This kind of expands upon that and says, well, what if we do the ABABC? But what if we run the C after our A? So we end up with ABACBC. And I find this fascinating because our A continues to be purely textural. It has driving energy. It's the verse. It's supposed to be the most energetic section. We get to the chorus. That's our hook. This is supposed to be the most memorable section. We get the melody with it. It shifts over to English, which I don't think is necessarily supposed to be done to make it more catchier on a global level, but I think it certainly does. We also have long held out notes on our vocals, some long held out notes on our vocals rather than the quick delivery we were getting in the verse. It is designed for memorability at its core. So, what is the point of the C section then? Well, it has to transition between our second verse and our second chorus, but it also needs to function as an outro. It needs to naturally end a track as well. And so it ends up being multi-purpose, and I think they pulled it off really well. It works as a breakdown in our bridge, but it also acts really well as a way of diminishing the energy and kind of finalizing the track and wrapping it up. And it's kind of curious to me how well that worked. I don't think a breakdown should end a song too well. It's kind of designed as this big momentous moment. The breakdown is when the mosh pit comes out, right? And yet it also works as a way to wrap the song up. I thought that it whatever tension, whatever little tension we had in the track, was also sort of resolved here. And I mean, I think a lot of that just comes down to a single note idea. Um, but it also just kind of wraps up the energy, which feels counter to what the breakdown does, but also it just works. And I'm not sure how that ends up going that way, but it does. And so that's something I need to like investigate now because I don't know, it's kind of genius. And I wish I could understand why it works the way it works. So the structure is really neat. And, like I've said before on this channel, I really like to see how these new bands are taking these old structures and deconstructing them and saying, well, what if we do this with it? What if we change this up? We're not going for a prog route, right? Our structure, we don't need to get up to G, H, and J just to make an interesting song. We can take A, B, and C and just find ways to jumble them up. Or just pull some out, like removing our final chorus. And I just love seeing the innovation going on with this. Now, I mentioned production was a thing too. And I found this to be really interesting in that the guitars don't feel like guitars. The vocals are vocally, they are raspy, they have that natural compression on them. They definitely feel like harsh vocals, but at the same time, because of the way they're layered, we have our center vocal that is our lead. It's the loudest, but we also have quieter vocals pushed off to the side in a reflective manner. I'd mentioned the mirror in the middle that reflects both sides evenly. And it kind of creates this electronic sound to it. I don't know if they're perfectly double tracked, or if maybe it is a single recording that has been layered over itself with minor differentiations between them, but it's missing that what I think is the core element of the double track, which is the little bits of imperfection. Rarely can a human record the same vocal line perfectly identical, give the exact same waveforms on two different takes. And that usually allows double tracking, legit double tracking, recording twice, to have an effect on the song that simply copying pasting a single recording doesn't have. And so you can kind of create that imperfection by forcing it, stretching things out, and maybe offsetting it just a hair just to create that imperfection. But here it ends up feeling too perfect and it comes off as robotic. And I think it's intentional because that digitization, I don't know what that word is. The digitifying of the vocals matches the sound of our guitars, which are also very digital. I had mentioned that they almost sound like compressed, distorted synthesizers to me, more so than guitars. And especially when we get introduced to some of the rhythmic ideas that are crafted through express cutting off of the playing in our breakdown, our C section, where we get those really quick, rigid stops. Either they're using kill switches or they've done this in the software and in the audio workstation, and they've just literally cut off the sound for sections there. And we get these pockets of silence. We have just this very digital sound to everything going on, and it sounds electronic. It sounds like, I don't want to say techno music because musically and sonically, this is very metal, right? We have the bite, we have the dirt, we have the edge, we have the loudness. But I think you could argue there is an electronic element to all this, a techno element to it, at least in timbre, if nothing else. And so when you mix the vocal technique that's going on and the way that they're layering it, it fits perfectly in, almost sounding like a machine making metal music, or at least the closest approximation it can given its completely digital tool set. And it's very cool that they've crafted that through a mix of probably a little bit of digital, but also physical with, guitar pedals and effects and, whatever stuff they have going on their amps and all that. All the cool stuff that goes into making a guitar tone. So the song ends up feeling very digital, and it's only compounded by the music video as well, which has a very synthwave vibe to it. It's just an interesting song overall. It's definitely metalcore at its core, but it's different enough in just enough areas I think that can separate it a bit and can stand out from the rest of the genre. I'm gonna hit some lyrics right here, and then we'll wrap this up. Well, as much as I gushed about the music, there is a bit of a divide here. It almost feels like the band writes a specific type of music and the lyricist just puts some lyrics on top of it. Um, See, the whole song has this wonderful digital metal sound going on that I just got done praising, and everything about the lyrics is rather physical. It is a horror twisted version of the idea. Well, I mean, the Sandman is already kind of horror and twisted, right? The idea of the Sandman was that I think the original tale was that they told kids to go to sleep or else the Sandman would come. And if you were not sleeping when the Sandman came, he'd pluck out your eyes or something like that. I don't remember. We used to tell kids the darndest things, huh? um, but this is about a Sandman who can control dreams, a different interpretation of them. But this Sandman is very vindictive and malicious. He brags about being the creator, the god of dreams, is actually a phrase utilized here. Says that I can create all the images inside of your head, and these images that I create are inspired by your fears. The longer that the night is, the more that I rule your world. When you wake up, you're actually in the unreal. When you get back to sleep, you're in the real, which makes sense coming from the mentality of the Sandman since he has no power during the day. Um, so those are both of our verses. The chorus says, I'm the Sandman. When the night begins, I control within. From dusk till dawn, you're not holding on. Your life is gone. And so this song is about a supernatural being who can inflict pain and misery on people when they sleep. Which about is it's about as far away from technology as you can get, unless we took this into more of a metaphorical realm and we look at this stuff like the metaverse and where they're trying to keep us in the headsets at all times, and then the people who create these digital worlds are the ones who rule our real, and when you take them off, you're in the unreal now, stuff like that. But I don't think that's what they're going for. Although I think that's a really cool angle to go with. The modern Sandman would be the one who controls your waking dreams in the digital realms. But yeah, so we have a highly digital sound with a music video that evokes ideas of synthwave and then lyrics of a very physical, analog, no electricity other than the electricity in your brain idea. And there's just such a mismatch there in theme, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just when I hear a unique sound like this, I kind of hope that it's paired with lyrical themes that really bring the two together and elevate them. But I am really interested in seeing where they take this sound overall, and how they develop this digital metal, as I'm going to call it, digital metalcore. Because it's a really unique sound to go along with it, which I think is it's where you need to innovate in the metalcore scene, because you can't really innovate musically, because then you're going to be prog metalcore. Metalcore kind of needs to be simple at its core. I gotta stop making that joke. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Frontiers. Mirage. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Anything that stood out to you that you'd like to add on to the conversation, or anything you'd like to correct me on? Let me know down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and there is a link for Linktree. Actually, that's not what I'm supposed to do here, is it? Down in the comments is actually going to be links for this band. You can find all their stuff down there. Their social medias, their streaming platforms. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Make sure you head over to their pages, show them some love, like, favorite, heart, whatever it is. If you're looking for some merch or some music, go ahead and purchase that, or listen to it on the streaming platforms. All that stuff, to show them some love from the critical community. We have an album review tomorrow, live stream on Sunday. We'll be back Monday for bands that only have one album. And all that is at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as usual. Although the live stream will be at 11 a.m. It'll be available at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard for everybody else to watch after the fact. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.